Good evening. Welcome to Kicking It with Kenneth. It's been a while since I've seen you guys out there, right? But tonight it's good to be here. Tonight's guest is divorce attorney, Miss Shaun Trye. Right, I thought it was Trye, but it's Trye.
Absolutely.
And tonight we're going to be talking about divorce. And primarily, I guess my first question would be, would you like to share with the audience some background information as to possibly why you became a divorce attorney?
Well, like you said, I have been in private practice for about 10 years, and the way that I got into family law or domestic law was kind of by accident, because my whole life I wanted to be a criminal law attorney. I wanted to, defend the righteous and get people, make sure that justice was done. And I did a few cases where I found that I was just making judgment decisions way too early. I just couldn't do it. I did a lot of, rape defense, and that was very hard. So I transitioned out of that. It was kind of by accident. I was working with this firm, and they were saying that they needed a family law attorney, and I had just finished law school. It was probably like 11 years ago. Okay. And I took over the division, and I found that I loved it, because you're interacting with people on a daily basis. Even though people have a way of looking at attorneys, I really felt like you could help people with what I'm doing. So
aside from the stigma associated with the
I
Esquire and everything,
I have to transcend that. It's this,
So you're giving us a positive impact in terms of what people's impression generally is.
I mean, absolutely.
For the most part.
I'm dealing with people at the pretty much one of the most difficult times of their life. So, a lot of times I have to wear different hats. I'm the social worker, I'm the psychologist, I am the attorney, I'm the friend, I'm the confidant. All those hats that I have, all those roles that I have to play, to assist my clients. So
you find it difficult sometimes with particular cases in terms of division of property and its fairness, if that's a word, in the divorce genre? Well,
one thing is Maryland is an equitable distribution of state. So that means, a judge, his job is to try to equitably distribute the assets. Now, I mean, you could look at it how you want. But what's equal? Meaning what's fair. So there has to be some determination as to what is fair. So, I look at it as, and you laugh, but I mean, you look at it as an umbrella. Two people come together and they decide they're going to be as one. And I'm not making that up. That's from the Bible. So as one,
not gonna do the Bible thing, right?
But I mean, that's the
go
basis.
Ahead.
That's the basis.
I'm gonna roll with you on that for right now.
Roll with me. But listen to what I'm saying. So you get two people together. They're one. So that means everything under that umbrella that these two people have created becomes one. It's not what's mine is mine and yours is yours. It's what's mine is yours and yours is mine. I mean, that's the premise.
And then there's what's to the side that's mine that you don't know about.
Well, you can keep it over there, but eventually somebody's going to get to it, or you're going to have to sell it.
And in lieu of that comment, right, and equitable and fair, I guess my question would be, if you come in with just you, right? And over a period of time, it's still just you. And at some point, we dissolve this relationship. And throughout the entire marriage, if you will, right, it's just you. I mean, no real contributions other than yourself. We don't have any children, right? It's just you. What's equitable?
Well, what's fair and what?
What is fair? I mean, because to me, right, if you come in with just you, you should leave with just you.
Well, then why get married?
That's my whole point.
I'm playing devil's advocate. I mean,
the whole concept of marriage, I think, is overrated. Personally.
You've been married and divorced.
Yeah, and I thought it was overrated when I got married, right?
Okay, but you did it.
And I understand that everybody has their own concept of what that entails in terms of the commitment, right? I think people
There are
get
levels.
people
There's
get
levels
caught
to
up
this.
in the idea of the levels of commitment because I can sign or sign a piece of paper, walk down the aisle, jump a broom, and have no more intent than I did without the paper. You understand what I'm saying? So I think that a lot of times when I right have a issue about division of property and what's fair and equitable, I'm that guy that's gonna leave everything except my clothes. You know, but then you have some others who are like, okay, you know, I want the dog too. So how do you cut the dog in half? You know what I'm saying?
And that's where the equality comes in. I mean, what's fair?
So who
and I
feeds
mean,
the dog, right?
but you know what? All that becomes a factor. Who
Yeah.
takes care of the dog?
Exactly.
You know, who took the dog to the dog appointments? I mean, if and you know, there's because right now a dog is property, so
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
distributed.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
equal
You get the
distribution.
head, I get the tail. Right.
You know, and that. Hey, you know, I say like a lot of times judges that, you know, they can't, this is not times of Solomon and you're not trying to, you know, cut the baby in half, but you're trying to be fair.
Okay.
So.
With that being said, in terms of, right, the Bible, as you alluded to, then I know that has some reference and just in my layman's understanding as to how that kind of transitions or parallels with the law, if you will.
Well, I mean,
Could you expand a little bit on that for me, please?
Well, I mean, like you said, what is a marriage? A marriage is based under the laws. It's very clear under God that two people will come together. And I mean, the whole, listen for a minute.
I'm listening.
Everything
I'm
that
laughing, but I'm listening.
yeah,
Go ahead.
and you know what? A lot of people laugh. I mean, they don't get it and they don't understand. And I was one of them too, because when you think of a marriage, a relationship, and you know what the Bible says that the two people are supposed to do when they come together, and then the role of the man and the role of the woman in that marriage. You know, people pretty much just throw out the Bible. It spells it out and says, you know, what the two are supposed to do. But a lot of times, and this is why people get divorced, because they don't know their roles. You know, women are putting on the pants and they're having to take up the slack for men who don't know who they are, don't know who they are for themselves, much less in a marriage with a woman. So you've got.
Do I hear some bias here? Do I
I
hear
mean,
some bias?
I mean,
Do I hear some bias?
No, I don't think you do.
Because
I think it's both.
What I thought. Okay.
I think it's
let's
both.
hear the
there
flip
are
of that.
people, just
Yeah,
say
let's hear
this,
the
the
flip.
bottom line is there are people who don't know who they are. So when
thank
you
you.
don't
Thank
know
you.
who you are, you cannot be who you need to be in a relationship
Okay, I agree
with
with that.
anybody.
I agree with
because
that.
you're not in a relationship with yourself.
Right. Well, you're in a probably dysfunctional,
Exactly.
diluted relationship with yourself.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Well, we have a few questions here, right? And I'm using this new iPad thingy, right? You know, I'm a millennium guy too, but you know, I like my questions on paper. You know. Oh, why do you think today's couple are so quick to end their marriages?
Because they, like I said, they don't know who they are.
Okay.
And what I'm seeing a lot of times, you know, because the roles are reversed, people don't understand their roles. You know, women get, and I'll take the slack for it or whatever, but there's a word called subservient, and a lot of people take that out of context because you don't understand the context in which it means.
Like obey.
But you know, it's one thing is you're not going to obey a dog. Do you understand?
No.
So
help me.
No, well, you do understand.
Help me.
You're not.
Help me.
You know, if I'm my role as a woman is to be subservient to my husband, it's because he has my best interest in at all times.
Okay.
Not sometimes, but all times. So I trust his actions. I trust his decisions. I don't need to try to wear the pants and try to be the decision maker because he is going to consult with me. We are going to do things as a family, but the role is he is the head, and he understands that. The provider is the head. So when you don't have that, and that's, you know, what I see usually they come in because either the man doesn't understand his role, which is it's to provide, and you could say it's old school and, you know, it's antiquated, but, you know, there's a reason why the divorce rate is so high.
Okay. Are you married?
I was.
Okay. And based on what you just expressed, those parts obviously became
others are people.
Unbalanced at some point?
I mean, it's like this, and I always use this when people come in. It's like being on a runaway train, and you are sitting in the back, and you are looking for the conductor, and the conductor is running the train off of a mountain. So what do you do as a woman who is sitting in the back behind the conductor? What are you supposed to do?
Go to school, become a divorce lawyer.
No, you get up, you get in that conductor's seat and try to, pull the emergency brake.
Keep the train back on the tracks, right?
But that's not how it should be. Do you understand?
Well, I mean, and again, just based on that comment, right? I think that it has a lot to do with what's evolved, if you will, in terms of societal expectations and the role reversals, if you will, as it relates to men and women, right? I do believe that, there are some handicaps, if you will, in terms of the phenomenal woman now, if you will, that has replaced, the even idea of the male being the head of the household. I mean, I think in a lot of cases or instances is that it is sometimes determined by who makes the most money, when in fact, in my experience, I mean, I've had, many friends and relatives that have been married, have had, roles reversed, and at which point that the dominance is then skewed, if you will. And when you spoke about the head of the household, right? It does not always translate to what's been written, right? Because when I review, right, the attitude in which the obedience and subservience is supposed to align with this union, I think that, again, people have gotten away from what the true essence of it is, which is why today, to me, it is just overrated. Because you're not
say marriage is overrated.
Right. You're not ascribing to what the intent of its initial inception was. So that's why it's overrated.
You're right. And like I said, people don't know who they are. They don't know what their roles are. So when it's pretty much, it's very easy. And I don't think it's easy to get a divorce. But when you look at the rates now, it's a lot easier to just kind of throw in the towel, and say, okay, well.
Well, that brings me to my next question then. When a person comes to you for your for representation, do you question why the marriage is dissolved, and did they seek counseling? What all do you ask your potential clients?
Well, I mean, that's a basic, because when they come to me, I'm pretty much the end of the road. So I want to know that you have pulled out all the stops and you've tried everything. So counseling is a big part of it. I always, I kind of side-eye people who decide this is not for me and this is it, and they haven't done any sort of counseling, whether it be, counseling through the church or private counseling or just one-on-one. Because it's necessary. Because, a lot of times you need sort of like a referee or a sideline person to kind of give you a bias. Not your mother and not your girlfriend and not your friends, but someone who really listens. So that's you got to do that.
It's amazing that you said mothers, girlfriends, and friends, right?
I mean,
it's like I go to a single person for a married problem. Or couples problem, like what are you, what information are you going to get in terms of, solid, experienced information? I think because of the fact. People do it all the
time, but that's the absolute worst thing I think you can do.
And I think because of the fact that we turn to family and friends that are generally partial to us anyway, that we get misinformation.
Oh, absolutely.
I happen to work in a field that deals with family, marriage, and counseling, right? And I have to generally, in some cases, throw all my learned information and my biases to the side because I want to be fair and impartial. And is that difficult for you sometimes?
Sometimes I'm like the fly on the wall, and I'm just listening. But I'll be very honest. I'm not going to have someone sit, whether it be a male or a female, and, I don't like to sugarcoat anything. Okay. So if you're wrong and I think you're wrong, I'm going to let you know. I do believe in being fair, but, but it all is fair in love and war. So sometimes,
I like that song.
yeah, but it has a lot of meaning, because sometimes, you have people who, they don't really know, as they're doing things, they don't really understand, they don't really know what they're doing, they don't understand the consequences of their actions. So kind of just sitting down, and I do this a lot of times with a lot of the men, because men and women are, we can have a show just about that. It's so different.
Right.
I've had an opportunity to kind of, not saying that I fully and 100% I understand men, but I understand them a little better than the average. So, just understanding we operate differently. Okay. The way that we think, our thought process, how we deal with certain things, it's totally different when you're from a male to a female. And you get people who just on a basic, they don't understand that, and that's the breakdown of the marriage.
Okay. Let me ask this question, right? Because you speak a lot from your experience, I'm sure, in terms of breakdowns, and a lot of your cases, right? Who do you find is generally at fault? If you find fault.
Well, what do you call in fault? Because fault.
Because usually, right? Because I understand it takes two people to bake a cake. It also takes two people to eat it, right? And what I mean by that is that when you start stirring up the pot, it's enough blame to go around, right? Because at some point we failed each other. So don't misinterpret what I'm saying in terms of whose fault, right?
Well, let's see this. A fault ground for divorce is adultery.
No, I'm not asking from a legal perspective. Okay. I'm asking from a layman perspective, because we don't have a whole lot of legal minds out there.
Know, like, is it the man or is the woman? Most filers are women.
Women, yeah. Why? Is there a reason that is?
Usually they're just fed up. They've, this is not the first chance, first time for them. It's just, a long list of things, and they finally just got fed up.
So let's go back to fault then. Yeah. My impression, right, based on that comment, was that it would appear to me, right, from an outside observer, that it would probably be more likely than not that it seems that the men are usually the cause of the dissolution of a marriage.
The dissolution, yeah. And it's usually
adultery. I think that's kind of skewed.
Well, you look at what we're talking about.
I'm gonna tell you why I think it's skewed. Because men are less likely to admit that they surrender to something. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. Where a woman who generally will hold on to her guns for much longer, but be more apt to act when she's done. Where I think with men, right, that we have a tendency to hold on because that bravado piece that's generally aligned with us.
I agree.
I also think that when marriage, which happens to, reach a point where there is no return.
The abyss, that's what I call it.
Yeah, right. The point is over. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Is it always the case that they divorce, even though everybody knows and you've sat with them? And
I've had people get back together in the courtroom. We're halfway through testimony.
Like on TV, right?
Right? Just right there. Start crying on the stand, and
Has it happened to you?
It's happened so many. A couple of. It's happened many times.
Give us one of your best scenarios, like the most drama from one of those, if you will, if you could.
Yeah, I can give some details. Wife got pregnant by the mailman. No. He wasn't the male. Anyway,
milkman.
Significantly younger, than these two, and she was the one who actually filed for divorce.
Right.
It was over. They went back and forth, and she ended up having the baby, and they got back together.
She was gonna divorce my man because she liked what the young back was doing for her, the old back wasn't doing.
I guess so.
That would be my
they worked
impression.
it out, and
and he's raising the guy's child. Oh man,
child.
That takes a lot. Do couples ever want to not have joint custody? How is that resolved?
What do you mean, when they don't want to share custody?
Well, it was an audience question, you know what I'm saying? So,
how is it resolved? Well, it goes in front of a judge, so technically, the default is always that the children are shared, that the parties share custody.
Okay.
So one of them has to tip the scale as to why that's not in that child's best interest for the parents to share.
And I'm just trying to interpret this question from my own point of view, in terms of no one really wanting the child. Like, okay, I don't want him, you take him. You know what I'm saying?
I've never had that happen. I mean, children are like, they're worth
That's
their
the
weight in
bargaining
platinum.
chip. Yeah,
You
that's
know,
kind of the bargaining chip. But
in diamonds. You know,
yeah,
that's like
yeah. So I guess, and trying to ascertain the depth of this question, right? I think that would probably be one of those rare occasions where, like, I don't want them, you take them. You've never had one of those situations.
I've had one of those in the course of like a juvenile court where the child was
should have been locked up, right?
control.
Not in somebody's custody.
So,
He should have been in custody.
They were
just
both,
not in the parents' custody,
right? I'm not gonna. That was the only scenario. Otherwise,
Right,
I mean, children,
right.
like I said, are like worth their weight in diamonds and platinum. And
when
gold.
it comes to divorce,
So yeah, nobody does that.
And you mentioned earlier that you are divorced. Did you seek counseling at some point?
I mean, that was an important part of it because you need that unbiased perspective, especially when you're going through something like
That's
that.
so emotional.
Yeah,
Right?
you gotta get it. And at some point, I mean, you're looking for either you want to have a better marriage or a better divorce. It's got to be one or the other. So that should be the goal of counseling.
Right. So and in lieu of being a divorced attorney, are there opportunities in your practice where you may see a young couple or a couple in general getting ready to go into a marriage, and you've had the occasion when you guys might want to go counseling first?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I always say that. I mean, you need to go to counseling.
Yeah. So even once they come to you, that's your general rule for you is to have you guys try counseling.
Oh yeah, premarital counseling.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And divorce counseling as well. Or
Yeah,
does it matter at
well,
that
and you
point?
know what? Even if you're going through the course of divorce, the court is going to make you do it anyway.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah,
9 times out of
that's
10,
new.
especially if there's children involved.
Yeah, that's kind of that's new for me. Let me say that, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's going to be some sort of mediation. You don't just get off.
I guess divorce is, and it's based on what's the actual seem to be rise or has been rising for decades. Same-sex marriages. Have you had any of those cases where you had to do a divorce for a same-sex marriage?
I am just starting to see separations, because now that it's legal, and I did a lot of premarital agreements and marital agreements, so now I'm seeing some separations.
Right.
So this will be interesting to see as time goes by how the courts are going to deal with divorces of same-sex couples.
Because I mean, I believe, and it's just based on observation. I believe if it's going to be considered a marriage, then it should be dealt with the same way as any other marriage.
Well, the law is in stasis right now because I've had one where they were married in Maryland, but they moved to D.C. and D.C. doesn't recognize those marriages. So I said, well, one of them had to move back. You got to move. If you want a divorce, you got to move back to Maryland.
Right. So, am I mistaken? This just recently they actually agreed in Maryland, and in the last couple years it was voted
last couple months. Really?
Yeah, it was just last couple months because I know it was on the ballot. It's been on the ballot the last couple times, and I think last time that it did actually pass. What is your actual gut feeling about the idea of same-sex marriage? And I know we're going somewhere else.
Yeah, we are. That's a loaded question.
Is it loaded?
Yeah, it is.
It depends on, I guess, the perception of whether or not it's loaded. It's not loaded. I'm not setting you up for anything. I'm just asking a general question. Yeah? Okay. Do the children have any say-so on who they want to live with?
It is really at a judge's discretion. Most judges frown upon talking to kids at all and putting them in the middle.
Regardless of their age?
But if I'd say like between 12 years and 13 years old is kind of like the side, some judges will talk to a 12-year-old in chambers and say, well, where do you want to be?
And the reason I guess this question is here because a lot of children have a tendency to go with the parent that is least likely to discipline. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely, and that's why courts don't like to listen to children either because they can't make a decision in their best interest.
Have you had one of those cases where it just tore at you in terms of the fighting in terms of custody for the children, where it kind of just, it was wearing at you because there was really no, I guess, for lack of a better word or phrase, there was no clear-cut person for the child to be, in that particular person's custody?
Yeah, one case that really stands out to me was a divorce case. I represented the husband, and this case went on for probably about 3 years, three or 4 years.
Okay.
But they had 2 children together, and there was a lot of, there were custody evaluations, psychological evaluations. I mean, just back and forth between the parents. Right. They were fighting so much. But one of the, I remember when we were going to trial, and myself and opposing counsel, and mind you, we've been doing this for 3 years. So finally, this was the day.
Right.
And, my client testified about, how mother had kept the children away from him for a period of about 3 years. And during those 3 years, he had bought gifts for Christmas and all the birthdays, and he had them laid out in their bedroom. So when for 3 years, so that it was piled up on their beds that they hadn't slept in 3 years, because he didn't see them.
I'm sure that was quite emotional.
That was very emotional.
Yeah. Did you get misty? Did you get misty?
I did. I think we both, everybody in the courtroom
I can imagine.
got a little teary-eyed because he genuinely, imagine. I mean, 3 years had gone by so fast too, and then you're looking at he hadn't seen them, and when he saw them in the courtroom, and that mind you, been 3 years, they looked different. They were older.
Yeah. So, in terms of the joy, because I think that was probably a joyful divorce, or if you will, custody for that matter, right? Have you to this point, right, just gotten a case that you absolutely just did not really want to deal with? And if so, can you elaborate a little bit on that?
I come across those from time to time where people,
like the divorce from hell, like Lord
a
of Roses.
woman or a man, and they're just set in their ways, and their ways are not necessarily beneficial for anybody, including themselves. So, what I have to do is, of course, I have to ethically cover myself. I do my CYA and cover what I have to do. But my job is, like I said, I don't make the decision. So I'm going to explain and the system to you. I'm going to help you navigate it, but ultimately the choice is yours. Okay. But you have some people who their whole goal in life is just to wreak havoc on the other person.
Right.
Whatever they could do, and if they have the money to do it, they're willing to spend it just to be spiteful. Okay. Those people I tend to. I have to kind of sit down with them and talk some sense, because especially when there's children involved, which we're not going to do War of the Roses when there are kids involved. Okay. So, there's a certain power play that goes along. You do what you have to do, but then at the end of the day,
manipulate the pieces, put them where you want, and then let them do what they need to do.
We're not going down that road.
I got one question for you that I think would probably encapsulate the whole idea of marriage and divorce, if you will, right? And basically what it is that, what do you believe the most common reason is for divorce?
Adultery. On both sides.
Is that still grounds for divorce?
Absolutely. It's the number one ground. It's the only ground, really, for divorce that you don't have to wait. There's no waiting period. Once you file,
it's just certain states that it's not. I thought Maryland was, no.
Well, no, we're not. Irreconcilable differences, which we don't have. People think that, you can use that, but no. But we have adultery. I mean, that's the number one ground.
Adultery? Stop. I thought maybe it was like walking the cat too much or something. I don't know, right? But final question, right? If you had any advice to give to someone who is in the process of thinking about divorce, and what would your advice be to that person at this point? Well,
and I guess when you come to that point, and and I've counseled a lot of people who are at that crossroad of should I go this route or should I not? And I always say, if you go down the route with divorce, it's going to get bad before and it's going to get worse before it gets better. So you need to understand that, because filing is the first thing, and then you got to actually go through it, and you're going to go through all different types of emotions. And you're going to change your mind. You're going to want to have it done yesterday. So you're going to have to do that, and it's not a quick process either. So Maryland typically takes like 9 months to do a divorce. So you just have to be clear that you're ready for that fight.
Okay, all right. So if you want to fight, put on your gloves, get a divorce, right? Come see Shaun. Matter of fact, Shaun, if you don't mind, would you mind telling the people about your firm and
Sure.
where it's
So
located and how they can get in contact with you?
Sure. So
if they need your services.
Well, we're a full-service law firm. We're located in Baltimore, and we have offices in Virginia as well. It's Trye Butler Mayo Griffith. Our website is www.tbmg.com, and our office number is 410-685-LEGAL. That's LEGAL.
Well, I want to thank Shaun for coming on today, right? I hope she gave some information to some individuals who are thinking about maybe, possibly getting divorced. Have a good opportunity here to find out some information for myself. So I want to thank everybody for looking in, right? And I'll see you the next time on Kicking It with Kenneth. Thank you, Shaun.
You're welcome.